Please welcome the panel on Modern Solutions for Parenting and Work-Life Balance, moderated by MSNBC anchor Alex Witt.
Whoa.
Yeah, these are comfy. Hey everyone, I'm Alex. Thank you all for joining here. I'm so excited to see so many men in this audience.
Yes.
I'm going to get to that in just a moment. Quick show of hands from people. How many here are parents? Okay. How many of you took time off when you became a parent and or gave up a career for the most part? Maybe you're not getting back to it, you're here. I took off 4 years, okay. How many of you feel like you're never able to do the parenting thing perfectly well? And even the job thing, we're constantly not doing anything at 100%. Great. Okay, so we're all there together. As I introduce our illustrious panel, I just want to quote, and I will mess this up, I will not do it as eloquently as she did, but someone who stuck with me, Becky Kennedy. She made a statement in a far more eloquent way than I'm about to, and she basically said, if you screw up raising your kids, nothing else you do or accomplish will matter. And I think our panel may have a sense of that. There will be one person, you're going to find out who's going to be a little contrarian and offer a little bit of a kind of an interesting edge on things. So let me just quickly say who's who. Down at the far end, we have Maren Shaw. She is a partner in the New York office of Quinn, Emanuel, Urquhart, and Sullivan, specializes in high-stakes litigations, complex legal disputes, often in very high profile and crisis situations. Yeah, no pressure there. She is also the mom of 3 young kids. Next to her, we have Eve Rodsky. She is a New York Times bestselling author of Fair Play, also a Reese's Book Club pick. Eve's new book explores the intersection of the science of creativity, productivity, and resilience, and she inspires to find equality of time and individual rights to personal time at home. We can all use a bit of that. And influence lasting change on a policy level. A for effort there on you, Eve. Alexis Ohanian next, a founder, former executive chairman, 776, venture capitalist. You may have heard of Reddit. Yeah, which he co-founded. It is right now valued, for all you Milken attendees here, north of $10 billion. A best-selling author and a girl dad of 2. Yes. Yay. We have Becky Kennedy, clinical psychologist, mom of 3, founder and CEO of Good Inside, a next-gen, basically parenting platform is the simplest way to say it, but she will tell you even better exactly what she does. And Jeanette Betancourt, senior vice president for U.S. social impact at Sesame Workshop, of course, the nonprofit educational organization behind Sesame Street. So there you have it, pretty illustrious panel. Usually I like to go ladies first. But not this time, because you are so in the minority, dude. So we're going to have Alexis go first with this question, and that is, you have said building a family and a workplace, they're not mutually exclusive. You build your calendar around your family. Despite all of your successes, there will be meetings that you will not take if it conflicts with your family. So I know there's a lot of women here. I'm going to start the applause for that. I think that is absolutely extraordinary. It is not always the case. But tell me how you came to that decision and how that works for you.
Look, I feel like I'm in a very fortunate position because at the point when I became a father, I was, a founder and executive chairman of Reddit, a company I had started. I had the autonomy to architect my life, right? I didn't have a boss that I needed to appeal to. And then when I started 776, 5 years ago, it was the same. And so I could really architect a firm that would be able to create this environment for not just me, but everyone on the team. And so I realize how lucky I am to even be in that position. And then the reason why, look, I think there are certain milestone moments again, there's still time when I know I'm supposed to be on the clock for my kids, and something comes up. There's a call I have to take. That happens. I feel terrible about it, but it happens. But when there are things like, I don't know, I have a second grade graduation to go to next week, that, yes, when that is on the calendar, I know I need to be there. I need to show up. And it doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the day on a Wednesday. There are commitments that I make to my kids, or at least one of them. The other one's not old enough to really remember. She's 2, so she's not going to really remember if I promise her anything. Not like the 7-year-old, right? If I make that commitment, if I make that promise, I'm going to make sure to do it. And I want to create an environment where everyone on my team can have that ability, even if they don't have kids, to build their schedules to accommodate whatever their needs are. And it's not for, I think I can make the business case for it. I'd also make the case that, I've met enough billionaires now, grandfathers, who say to me that their biggest regrets in life, you don't have to talk to too many of them, but by the time you talk to like 24 of them, and they're all like, God, my biggest regret, didn't spend enough time with my kids. Thank God I got a second chance with my grandkids. You realize like, oh, you're probably giving me some important life advice that I should listen to. And I just want to not end up regretting missing those key moments.
Yeah. Becky, why is parenting more important than ever? What is it about this time that makes you believe that?
I think more is being thrown at our kids than ever, right? I think we all remember our childhood and then we see our kids. There's so much immediate gratification. There's so much temptation. There's so much online. The age at which my kids ask me how our babies are made, or literally, why does everyone laugh when you say the word 69? Like, these things happen because of their environment. And if we're not able to meet our kids with presence, with language, their curiosity doesn't die. They just go fulfill it in a really unfortunate way. Online, the random 12-year-old kid on the bus. And so with so much coming at them, us developing skills and language that we weren't given by our parents has never been more important for our kids' mental health. I think if we zoom out, parenting is the last frontier where we glorify instinct alone. I know there's a lot of investors here, and I just can't imagine a founder comes in and says, I am going to grow my company on instinct alone. I feel like you're like, the meeting is over. No, thank you. There are some moments that come naturally, and there are some moments that don't. And to me, parenting is a language. If you were raised, let's say, in English, but I want to talk to my kids about their feelings. I want to talk to them honestly. I don't want to just send them to their room. I know how bad that felt for me. It's kind of like saying I want to talk to my kids in Mandarin. We would never expect to be able to speak Mandarin without education and support. And I'm not talking about a 60-second Instagram reel. To me, the cost of not having true parental education, almost parent school and support, has just never been so high when the world today is so different and so much faster than it's ever been before.
And listen, Alexis, I know you believe that family is actually a really good investment, right? Here we are, we're Milken. It's a good investment. How is that?
I think, there's the figurative version, of course, and that ROI is, off the charts. And we talked about there's plenty of sad, lonely billionaires who wish they could spend time with their kids. But I think literally, too, we've seen more and more examples of businesses that are built around, I think Dr. Becky is a great example of that, who have built around these principles and the demand that exists. It's kind of crazy when you consider the amount of time that we'll spend with our children during those key years relative to the time we spend with them after they turn 18. If you haven't seen that bar graph, just Google it. You'll see it. It'll make you sad. When you understand and visualize just how scarce and fleeting that time is, you know it must be valuable because of the limited duration you have of it. And I really think in so many ways, understanding the reason why I work and the reason why I aspire to build things is I now have a really important legacy I care about. And, Mike Tyson didn't have the best quote when asked about the legacy he left behind. Incidentally, that's also a hilarious quote. You should watch it. The young girl who interviewed him handled it very well. But I do take that responsibility seriously. And I think as a man, becoming a father was the first time in my life I actually put my ego on a different level because I truly realized I was not the center of the universe holding that little child. And I love my wife, but she would agree. Like, I treat her as a peer, I do. But like, having a child was such a humbling experience, especially for someone who had really, I'll be the first to admit, always prioritized myself at the end of the day. It was so eye-opening and truly awe-inspiring to realize that that little death of that part of my ego that put this little human ahead of me, as I can speak to as a man, was so clarifying because it gave me a reason why I should be building the things I'm building that was bigger than myself. And we had a borderline spiritual experience. I don't want to preach to y'all, but really it's, and to see young men who I have, you know, now in my role as an investor, who I've counseled through building companies, they're other CEOs, but to see them before and after fatherhood has been awesome. Truly, truly awesome. And it's those guys that give me a lot of hope too for the next generation.
And yet you talk about what you've given up, and I think about Mara, and she's, you know, this badass litigator, right? And she's got 3 young kids. And you talk about the importance of building out boundaries for yourself as a parent. So explain how you go about doing that when it never seems like there's enough hours in a day. And we saw a bunch of hands of people, myself included, who feel like you're not doing anything as well as you should be.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there aren't enough hours in the day. And, you know, I have to say, I think I'm like the anecdotal experiment on this panel. I haven't written a book. I don't have any degrees or professional expertise in childhood development. So I can really only tell you kind of what I've gleaned from my own experience and how I choose to organize my own life. But I think, you know, one thing that I've been giving a lot of thought to in terms of at least how I've chosen to organize my own work-life experience, given all these competing, you know, pressures and the urgency of everything in today's world, right? Like everything for my clients is urgent, everything for my kids is urgent. I mean, everything feels increasingly urgent for all of us, I think, is this idea of, you know, not seeing work-life balance as these oppositional forces, but seeing them more as kind of an integrated whole. And it made me think of something, you know, I do a lot of like mentoring of junior attorneys, and the thing they always want to ask you is like, how do you develop clients? How do you develop a book of business, right? This is what everyone's focused on. And I used to say this thing that like just felt very true to me that I think maybe has more applicability to a panel like this than I might have thought, which is, you know, I always make my friends my clients and my clients my friends. And for me, that's just, you know, what worked for me in business. It's like what I enjoyed and how I chose to organize things. But I think, you know, to the broader point of competing pressures and being bad at everything all at once and not having enough hours in the day, I find more and more, you know, that I think I've sought out professional situations that overlap with my personal values and situations, in the sense of like, you know, I work at a firm where most of my colleagues are genuinely my friends, and I've stayed there my entire career, and it's very important to me. I know their families, we socialize together, we talk about business, we enjoy each other. The same is true of most of my client base, you know, as things evolve over time. Like I tend to stick with clients that, you know, I know personally, I know their spouses, they know my spouses, we go to each other's, you know, kids' birthday parties, we introduce each other to our friends. Yes, we talk business, yes, we talk things, we play tennis together. And at least for me, you know, that I think enables me to do a lot of things simultaneously without feeling as much like I have to sacrifice one thing for the other, and that they both enrich each other, right, in a way that can kind of be accretive. So I really like this idea of, you know, perhaps a bit of a paradigm shift in the way you think about approaching life, especially in the current environment where everything is integrated. We're all on our phones all the time. We have access to everything at once, right? There's so much more flexibility around how to do things remotely, how to do things simultaneously, the ways in which we communicate, that I think, you know, this idea of work-life balance and work on one hand and life on the other, and that they're competing with each other, and maybe I think is a little bit antiquated.
So when we're parenting, most of the time we're doing it, you know, behind your door at home, and you feel somewhat isolated. And I know, Jeanette, you feel like parents need a lot, and they don't have to do this by themselves. And you, of course, with, you know, the Sesame Street family, you help educate on that. So talk about that.
That we do. I think it's that idea that the complexity of parenting, We know that many of you indicated your parents, but at the same time, I bet many of you are feeling guilty being away from your families for a long period of time. So that idea of complexity of parenting means that if we are ever going to have a work-life balance, work environments need to understand the complexity. And what that means is that parenting is not only at home. We are parenting children in our home environment, but we also have what we call a circle of care. And that means that everyone who is a parent has to work with the healthcare system. You have to find childcare. You have to bring children to school. That kind of coordination is really never appreciated when we're looking at work-life balance. The other area is also understanding early childhood in particular. It's one of the most fundamental periods of development. But as a parent, we often feel we're not doing enough. Is this the way it's supposed to developmentally happen? Our goal is to provide resources, not only in our wonderful Friendly Muppets, but also on parenting and giving those everyday moments that give value and connections to your children, but also ease the stress. And lastly, one of the things that we need to consider is that we all want work-life balance, but in many professions, that work perspective, we don't have the flexibility of saying, no, my family is first. And I think that's the change that we need to drive here in the context. And lastly, which we'll talk about maybe later, is the impact of digital media. Even though we are a media organization, it's the values of how we use that as a family from the very beginning.
Yeah. I'm going to read you something that happened for those of you who haven't been glued to your phone, perhaps, or seen the Los Angeles Times headline that came out today as a news alert. And the lead is, women in the Bay Area lead the nation in delaying motherhood. Some are putting career, life experiences first. The San Francisco Bay Area is home to the greatest share of women having children at 40 and older, a trend that experts chalk up to a combination of economic opportunity, progressive social norms, and access to reproductive technology. I just found that was interesting, almost as a segue to Eve, who has a very passionate proposal, discussion, information sharing about the fact that there are a lot of women in this world and partners with men and otherwise saying, you know what, we're foregoing this whole thing, that the rate of parenting is dropping around the world. So talk about the research behind that, what the numbers are telling us, and the reasons for it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think the reason is because we've never stopped to really ask, what does parenting mean? Parenting is work. I'll just give you a quick example that allowed me to start on a journey of being an expert on the gender division of labor. That was definitely not what was on my third grade, what do you want to be when you grow up board? I think it said astronaut or veterinarian. But right after I had my second son, I was on a breast cancer march with a lot of women that look like you. There were 10 of us on this march. Most of us were married to men and had little kids. It was 12 o'clock on a Saturday. We're having this empowering, amazing morning until I say around 12, we had a reverse of Cinderella experience where we all turned into pumpkins, where all these women, Alex, started to look at their phones. And I was looking with them saying, what are you guys doing? We were supposed to go to lunch. We were with a friend who had been recently diagnosed. And I looked over their shoulders and I was seeing things like, where did you put Hudson's soccer bag? What's the address of the birthday party? Did you leave our kid a gift if you want me to take them? One person asked, where's Hudson's pants? But my favorite was my friend Kate's husband. Again, she's the head of stroke and trauma at a major hospital. He's a systems person. And his text just said to her, remember, this is noon on a Saturday. Do the kids need to eat lunch?
Come on.
And so what was so alarming to me was not that this was happening. It was the response of those women, those highly accomplished women that I was with. They didn't just say, oh, well, let's turn off our phones. Our partners have this. They looked at me and they said, Eve, I can't go to lunch because I left my partner with too much to do.
And these powerful women left me to go find Hudson's soccer bag, to bring a perfectly wrapped gift to a birthday party, and yes, to feed their kids lunch. But before they left, this is what I had them do, and it started on my Fair Play journey, Alex. I had them help me count up how many phone calls and texts we had received. We had 30 phone calls and 46 texts for 10 women over 30 minutes. That's parenting. And so maybe Stephen can bring up the slide. So cut to 10 years later, and now we have the biggest and only institute that's devoted to parenting, to the work. Parenting is work. And the truth is that parenting is a lot of labor. It is so much labor, and women are still shouldering 2/3 or more of doing that labor, and it affects people that don't even have children. But it really affects those that are working under men whose wives handle all this labor. Because then there's no empathy. There's a call to work 5 days a week back into the office. It's not parenting out loud. It's hiding what we do. It's not letting anybody be anything outside of being a parent, partner, and professional. So the slide I'm showing, Alex, is a slide of a study we just published in the Archives of Women's Mental Health that shows that of our Fair Play system, there's 100 tasks that we track. These are just 30 of them. And women, these are mostly dual income couples, are doing it all. So why, you're asking me, Alex, do I think women are opting out of parenting or they're burning out? Is because of this.
You say it's burnout and boredom.
Well, we have a survey of over 1,000 women, and we asked them what they thought about parenting, and it's the 2 Bs. They say it's boring, and they're burned out. At least if I'm bored, I don't want to be burned out. I want to be having fun, maybe on a couch, like on a trip. Or if I'm burnt out, I'd love to have at least the endorphins or the dopamine of what that feels like. But instead, we're having these experiences of burnout and relationship satisfaction. And so I believe that until we invite men into their full power in the home, like Alexis, and by full power I mean partnership, we'll talk about that later, not ownership, not helpership. If you're so overwhelmed, just tell me what to do, I'll help. Then we will still continue to see this disparity, and we'll see women continuing to do it all, which means that they don't want to have it all, because having it all actually means doing it all.
Well, and Becky, I mean, you've made the point that women, parents in general, so under-resourced.
Yeah, I mean, I think even I talk a lot about this, but so much of what we're talking about, whether it's talking to my partner about who is going to not only take our kid to soccer, but who's going to think about soccer? Who's going to remember that Bobby needs new cleats, it needs a new size? That conversation. Or, hey, I want to sleep in one weekend morning too. Or at work, I'm not able to go to this meeting because I have my kid's graduation or just because I have something else that I want to do with my kid. Every one of those conversations requires a skill that I think most of us adults, especially women, are still building, which is the skill of setting boundaries and tolerating people being disappointed. To some degree, we've internalized this narrative that our job, especially I think as women, but caregivers in general, are to gaze out and just say kind of, what does everyone want of me? And let me become completely expert at meeting other people's needs. And then what you do, and I used to do this, is you self-abandon. You don't even know, well, what do I need? And is it okay to get what I need if other people are distressed or inconvenienced or sigh as if, oh, that's going to be annoying, right? When you do talk to a partner about changing, the gender division of labor, or you do talk to a boss about needing a day off that's inconvenient, I think the thing that's unsaid a lot is we actually have to build a muscle of tolerating other people being upset in the process. Because when you have those conversations, when I first said to my husband, I do want to sleep in one weekend. I know I keep saying I don't, but that was a lie. I do. I think we think our partners are going to say, you deserve it. I am so happy for you. I've been waiting for you to ask. I'm going to celebrate with you. No, they usually say, oh, or when you say to your manager, I can't come to that meeting, we have to reschedule it, they're also going to say, oh, because it's okay if they find that inconvenient. But when we can actually build the skill and have resources to build the skill of, I can get what I need, other people can be inconvenienced along the way, I think that's when a lot of these dynamics start to change.
Yeah. Which brings me to, Jeanette, what you mentioned earlier. I'd like you to elaborate on the circle of care. I mean, how much is that about the partner? I mean, is it about, you know, having someone help drive your kids someplace? Is it about a babysitter? Is it about a tutor if your kid's in school? I mean, what is the circle of care to you?
The circle of care becomes an understanding of what true parenting is, meaning that we have to think of parenting beyond our home. So it requires incredible coordination because, especially with younger children, you are looking at bringing them to the doctor. You may have also children that are experiencing either mental health distress or may have special needs, and what layering that brings on. When we're talking about the circle of care, what it's trying to do is say, broaden your perspective of parenting. Parenting, it occurs not only in the home, but within your community. And the workplace needs to be part of that to understand that. It also means that parents now do feel, whether they're single parents or there's a dual parent household or a blended household, they feel very isolated. They feel also that they're questioning, am I doing the right thing? And often it is because you don't have that information available of what is development, what is typical for a child. That's not as easy accessible in your everyday moments. So think of expanding. If we leave with any message here, and particularly one that brings financial investment, it is that we need to change the perspective of the workplace. The workplace needs to account for parenting moments, but also other coordinations with other systems, the healthcare system, the education system, the mental health system, and try to be aware that we need to coordinate these systems much better. It's not just the parent to do that.
And speaking of system, Eve has a phrase, boundary systems at home. I'd like you to elaborate on that. I mean, is this about task switching up or saying, I'm not going to do past this and that's okay? To Becky's point, you can feel okay about that. You don't feel guilty about it.
Yeah, I think, of course, parental leave and understanding that we need better systems to support parents outside the home is key, and I think we've all been fighting for that in different ways, and I appreciate us, especially Alexis's voice in this conversation.
Yeah, we're going to have him talk about
yes,
parental leave
but
in a second.
what I want to say is that it's a both and. Yes, we need parental leave. Yes, we need better health care, but we also need to change the Overton window of who does care. I saw my first Clorox commercial where I saw a man on his hands and knees scrubbing a toilet. And that was yesterday. And I wanted to take a video of that and bring it to this panel. But in our home, there is a secret formula. We found that people in our system who practice the fair play system, we're a nonprofit, so I'm not here to, the resources are available for everybody. We found that they fared a lot better in the pandemic on relationship satisfaction and our burnout scale. And why? It's because we teach people, what fair play teaches us is that there is a secret formula of boundary systems and communication. But how did we develop that system? It all came down to the one question that we asked. It's first when I started to develop Fair Play, which is the system to help divide up domestic work at home, I was asking who handles groceries. Well, men overreport what they do, women underreport. It wasn't helpful. So once I changed the question, everything changed, Alex. I asked, how does mustard get in your refrigerator? I asked that question in 18 countries. And what we found out is that the Nordic countries, mainland China, South Korea, and the US, it's all the same. If you're married to a man, women are the ones who notice that their second son, Johnny, likes yellow mustard with his protein, otherwise he chokes. That's conception. If you look at a RACI framework or project management, I was looking at it that way. That's a conception. Then women were the ones who told me they got stakeholder buy-in for what their family needs for the grocery list. They didn't actually say stakeholder buy-in, but that's what I was listening for. And they also monitor the mustard for when it runs low. So that's a planning stage. And then what I realized is that men were losing psychological safety because they're going to the store with zero context to buy the mustard. They're bringing home spicy Dijon every fucking time. And so then what happens? What happens is that I know I lost the two things that I need in my home organization. I lost accountability and trust. I can no longer trust you to bring home the right type of mustard. And so then women would say to me, you want me to trust my partner with my living will, Eve? The dude can't even bring home the right type of mustard. So as mediators and lawyers, what we like to say is the presenting problem is never the real problem. It's not about mustard. What it's about is that there was one person owning the conception and planning, and there's another person just helping with execution. That doesn't work in the work context. You would never, I know Alexis, I know Becky would never hire anybody if I walked into your office and say, hey, what should I be doing today? I'll just wait here until you tell me what to do. Every day over and over again, that leads to either somebody being fired or that burnout and boredom that we were talking about. So instead, what we try to teach, the secret formula is moving away from 50-50. I don't even understand what that means. It's a very dynamic, stressful time to raise kids. Instead, moving to boundaries, systems, and communication, which look at how we own the conception, planning, and execution of what has to be done in our home. And that can look different in every home, as long as you both agree on it and you have mutual expectations.
There's something that you wrote about how you like to invite men into their full power at home. And you think, Alexis, you've been someone who has demonstrated that. No, you've done a good job. You know, we're that's why you're here, buddy. Anyway, so
it's a practice. It's a practice.
But what it just to demonstrate what we value as a society. Here was something that Eve was saying: the best leaders are the ones who know the name of their child's dentist, and they make the appointments, they take their kids to their cleanings, they tell their teams they are parenting out loud. And any men here, do you know the name of your kid's dentist? Just curious. We're not calling you out, but do you know? Okay, there's a fun. That's great. That's good. But when it comes to parental leave, maybe there needs to be more element of parental leave, Alexis, so that you can get a sense of who your kid's dentist is going to be and be part of that. Talk about where we are as a society in approving parental leave, thinking it's not some wimpy thing like, oh God, they're taking off 6 months. They just said, the wife had a baby, but why does he have to go? I mean, where's the mentality to all of this, and how successful are companies at implementing parental leave?
I think this is one area where tech has led the way in a lot of regards. I didn't even know about parental leave, paid family leave, until I think I came back to Reddit 2014 as chairman, and we just hired Caitlin Holloway, who ran all of our people and ops, and she said, listen, if we were, this is early in the turnaround, and she said, if we want to hire the best people here at Reddit, here are the benefits we need. And I go through the list, and she's like, blah, 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 and I see paid leave. I'm like, okay, whatever. I honestly didn't think anything of it. It was just table stakes if you wanted to hire the best people in tech circa 2014, 2015. Then 2017, I'm going to become a father, and I asked to run me through the process, just like any other employee. And it was great, because I learned that you could not take all of your time at once, and you could spread it out. And especially as the one not giving birth, it's a very flexible thing to be able to say, yeah, I'll be home for N number of weeks, and then use the rest of that time as it makes sense for my family, right? Maybe I'll take Thursdays and Fridays off for the remainder, or what have you. And that whole experience is obviously so harrowing. You can read all about Serena's birthing experience, and she nearly dies in the process. And that solidified for me the importance of this for all Americans, because I knew I was one of the lucky ones that didn't have to worry about getting back to work, but so many Americans don't have that opportunity. And the op-ed, servicing Washington, and I have to give credit where it's due. I worked with Ivanka Trump. This was under the Trump administration, and Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, and President Trump signed into law 12 weeks of paid family leave for all federal employees. That was the first of any kind of paid family leave policy for Americans, and it was just a start. Obviously, I'd love to see all Americans get access to this. There are states that have devised ways to actually be able to finance this and make this work. I think, there's definitely a counter narrative from folks who have, with their soapboxes, talk some trash about guys who take paid leave, but I don't find them very remarkable at all or compelling. I think it helps with the gender equity. It helps with the dynamics in the household. Frankly, I think it helped me be a better dad. I loved seeing the doctor being so far left as something that men basically never do, at least according to the data. I specialize in the SAD doctor's appointments. So anytime my kid is getting an immunization, I'm the one who does it because I want to make sure I'm associated. And trust me, there's nothing more. Okay, if you want to get to conventional masculinity, honestly, there's nothing that is more satisfying to me as a father to be there trying to comfort my daughter who is obviously in pain, but for a thing that I know is good for them. And it is awesome. I don't enjoy seeing her suffer, let's be clear. But there's a reason I know Dr. Brown is her pediatrician, and there's a reason that thankfully she hasn't caught on to me being the one taking her for the owie doctor visits. But I think there are opportunities for men to step up, but if you have dual income households, we know how expensive it is to raise a kid, to get a home, to all the things. You can't expect that opportunity. So I think the momentum has definitely fallen out of the sails. I want to encourage all of you to make this a priority with candidates you're voting for. I think there is a path forward, and I think some sort of national paid leave. When you consider, the scariest stat is 1 in 5 American women are back to work within a couple weeks of giving birth.
Yeah.
And when you consider a lot of these women, statistically, some number of these women had C-sections. That is a significant surgery. And these are the women who are, making our economy work. And the fact that we treat them and their families so poorly after what we say is a really important thing is appalling.
Yeah.
But I love hearing all these perspectives on this because I think this is how we get the change we all need.
Can you all see the QR code? There should be a QR code. You're going to put it up there. There you go. If anybody has a question, we will have a little bit of time for Q&A for one of these wonderful 5 panelists. So scan the QR code, and if you write a question, I will get it here, and we will ask it. Maren, you've said no one size fits all. The fact is that each individual family, single parent, couple, whatever it is, has to figure out what is going to work for them. To what extent do you think there is, the community pressure, like the neighbor down the street who's kind of shading you if you're not doing it this way or the other? No one size fits all. It's so important to be able to own that and say, this is what's right for me and us.
I think that's absolutely true, right? And it's very difficult. Especially, anecdotally, I guess, as a working mother, there are a lot of aspects of my child's existence or my kid's existence that I don't have as much access to as some of the other parents or some of the other mothers, right? Everybody, I think, has to find the balance that's right for them. And, everybody, I think, is susceptible to kind of the mommy guilt or parent guilt and pressure around, am I doing it in the way that I'm expected to be doing it? Does it look a certain way to someone else? Am I falling short? The same thing that you kind of referenced earlier in terms of, the idea of balance just meaning that you're simultaneously failing at both things, right? Which I think everybody here probably, in one way or another, whether it has to do with work or family or life or interests or, whatever it is, probably feels. Something I think that at least has resonated with me in this, and I do think probably the older you get and the more mature you get, the better you know yourself and the more agency you feel over how to, construct your own boundaries in your own life. But, I think a couple things. This idea of balance, right? We have this idea that it's kind of this 50-50 split, like you were referencing. And to me, it's much more of a fluid and ever-evolving concept. And I think, I had a mentor once when I was a baby lawyer who used to always tell us, always resist the urge to try to come up with a killer metaphor on the fly, because 9 times out of 10, you're not smart enough and you're not fast enough, and it's just going to fall flat, which I think is completely true. So I did not come up with this metaphor right now, but I ran it through ChatGPT last night, and I think it's a pretty good one, which is this idea of, think of balance as like surfing a wave, not walking a tightrope. And I think that kind of fluidity and like grace around a flexibility can maybe, give people the grace to fashion their lives in the way that works best for them in the moment, right? And I think there are many aspects of this, different times in your life, different priorities, different ages of your kids. As you move through life, if you give yourself the permission to ride the wave, in a sense, it may open up a different concept of how to balance things and how to give yourself permission to do what is right for yourself and what works for your family in particular moments.
So we're getting a bunch of questions I'm going to get to in a second, but something you just said, I'm going to ask this, and I have no presumption of what the answer should be, but in terms of knowing yourself, I want each of you to answer this. It can be yes, no, maybe, or no comment, or elaborate a little bit. Do you think older moms make better parents? And I want to say this generally, because what we're talking about is women who've been able to establish careers, get a little bit older, further in their careers, before they'd choose to have parents. That Los Angeles Times article headline that I read at the beginning here that just came out this afternoon about those in the San Francisco Bay Area. Do you think, it can be maybe or I don't know, but Marlon, I'll go with you first and just run down the line. Do you think that becoming a parent when you're a little bit older allows you a little more of that wisdom, the balance that we seek or need?
I have no idea.
Okay,
I
cool.
think this is another one where it's like no one size fits all, really, is my answer. Yeah, I think it really depends. I was a mom in my early 30s and my early 40s, so I should probably have a more nuanced perspective on this, and I don't. I think it probably is really context specific and depends on who you are and where you are in your life.
A very diplomatic answer and very appropriate, no doubt. But Eve, what do you think?
Well, what I'll say is I was older, but I thought in my 20s, I remember Elizabeth Warren asked me this in law school, what I wanted to do with my law degree. And I said, I said I was going to be president of the United States and a senator from New York and still be a Nick City dancer. And hopefully at the same time, because it was the Legally Blonde era. And so I thought I'd be smashing all these glass ceilings along the way. And so if you cut to me 10 years later, where I was older, the only thing I can tell you, Alex, I was smashing was like peas for my toddler, while trying to desperately hold on to a corporate job that told me if I wanted to continue breastfeeding, I'd have to do it in a broom closet with no outlets, so I'd have to bring a battery pack.
Come on.
So no, I don't think older parents have it easier if we still have those expectations, especially as women, that we're going to do the 3 toxic words. Mm-hmm. That when I have a child, no matter what age, that I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Anytime I hear someone say that when they're pregnant or they have a little kid or any stage, we'll figure it out, I know they're in for a recipe for disaster, regardless of their age.
Okay. Alexis, any thought on that?
Nope.
Okay, cool. Pass. Not going there.
I will recommend, I'm a technologist. Hans Rosling has a really good TED Talk about what a difference the washing machine made on the lives of women. So consider this invention is old enough that at the time where there's normally a single income households, and for women, mothers, they spent such a disproportionate amount of their time doing laundry by hand. When this machine showed up in people's lives, it was a major, major revolution in terms of women's lib and freedom and time. My hope is, we're getting to a place now with robotics that probably in the next 2 years, 3 years, upper income households and technology those prices do come down pretty quickly. But I think upper class households will be able to have something that makes your Roomba look like a total joke, right? Something that is actually doing a lot of the work around the home.
Bring it on.
Laundry. My hope is, I'm forever an optimist, watch that Hans Rosling TED Talk of what the laundry machine did, that what we can get from something like robotics, that again, at first, just the rich will have, but over time, many, many more households will have, can be an incredibly powerful tool to start to level the playing field in terms of freeing up time, because as long as it is so expensive to have a child that we need dual income households, like we're going to have significant problems, because money can solve that, but obviously that's not a solution forever. That's unreasonable. But I hope the technology can help level it. So I'm not answering that question, but I am deflecting.
Yeah, I got it. So our clinical psychologist, Dr. Becky, is it something that you think if people know themselves a little bit better? I mean, what do you, just in generality, when you talk to clients or colleagues or anyone who comes and asks you a question, and we got some for you here, by the way.
Sure. I think we tend to think about age in an unhelpful way, because parents will say to me, like, at what age will my kid stop freaking out about small things? And I think it's very similar to, at what age will your kid know how to swim? You'd say, you're asking the wrong question. Like, what are you doing in the years? So if in the years before we become a parent, we are figuring out not just what swaddle we want, but what triggers me? What kind of are my wishes about having a kid, and what will it be like if my kid is different? What do I expect in my relationship with a partner if I'm partnered when I have a kid? Then I think parenthood might get a little easier, because not only are we getting to know ourselves, but we have a sense of realistic expectation. But age alone, I don't think age alone ever gives us skills magically.
That's a great answer. Makes total sense.
Yes.
Last word to you on this, Jeanette.
Yeah,
questions?
I would say very much look at parenting as a career. We don't assume age or experience in that. It's something new. I'm a parent of 3, and I had kids later in life, and my expertise is in early childhood. It's in special education. I work for Sesame. I remember when I gave birth to my first child, I said to my husband, "Oh, shit." Because I suddenly figured I have this incredible responsibility of this little one for their lifetime. And I have the knowledge, but oh my gosh, I wish I had so much more resources, and also other parents sharing that confusion and support along the way. So I think we need to look at parenting just as we look at a career. You build experience, you build knowledge, and you need support. And you need resources, training, and all of that, but we don't think of it that way.
Lots of questions coming in. First one, Dr. Becky, what role do you think maternal instinct has in the cultural narrative about parenting?
I feel like someone just threw me right down the middle. I think this has had a profound impact, not only on maternal mental health, but on a whole generation after generation of child mental health. Because first of all, I'd never hear about paternal instinct. I don't know if it's ever been talked about, but if you think about this narrative that women just have instinct, parenting comes naturally. Well, the natural implication then is that as soon as parenting feels hard, it means you're broken. It means you have failed. And then a whole generation after generation, especially of women, they feel alone. They feel shame. What do we do when we have shame? We freeze. We don't ask for help because we assume we will be revealing something awful about ourselves. And then, unlike a CEO these days who, gets executive coaching, or a doctor who goes to medical school, we feel so awful about ourselves, which then gets transmitted in every interaction we have with our kid. And so we know maternal instinct was invented by a man. That's not just my opinion, that's true. And it's not to say there aren't moments that come naturally. I think there are moments that come naturally, and there are moments that don't. Knowing how to deal with a grocery store tantrum, or your kid saying, "I hate you," or lying to your face. I don't think anyone would say the way you show up in a way you're proud of can be done by instinct. And to me, what we're trying to do at Good Inside is very similar to what happens, yes, for doctors and lawyers and even CEOs, where they wear their education like a badge of honor. They are so proud to say, I have education and support. And I think parenting is kind of the next field where we can really elevate in the same way.
One question comes in, and I'm just going to answer this one. Is there any parenting skill that you think makes you better at work? I'm a news anchor, and when live news comes in, it's crazy, throw all the scripts out. I think multitasking is something that I learned being a parent, and it makes me better at work. Does anybody disagree with that? Or
I disagree.
You do? Okay, go.
Well, I think part of researching fair play was talking to a lot of neuroscientists. And one of my favorite neuroscientists said, when I asked him, are women better multitaskers than men, said, well, do you want me to answer from a science perspective or from a cultural perspective? And I said, well, science. And he said, there's no difference in multitasking between the genders.
Yeah.
And in fact, multitasking is bad for everybody. It's called task switching. And the more our brain does it, the more we're overwhelmed and we make poor decisions. But he said, culturally, if you think you're a better multitasker and that's why you take pride in wiping asses and doing dishes, and I can get my tenure in golf game back because you want to do that work, then it's better for me, so why should I convince you otherwise? I started crying in his office that day. Because that was my toxic message about parenting, that the reason I was doing so much more was because I grew up in a single mother household and I was just a better multitasker because I helped my mother, I noticed everything, and my partner didn't hear our kid screaming or crying at night, and I was just better at doing some of this. And so I think, of course, we all have to multitask, but I think it's really important that we don't use it as a toxic message for why we're doing more.
Okay.
Can I add something?
Yeah, 100%.
Just because I think that as soon as we start talking about parenting and learning, all of us can have this kind of thought that we have to be perfect, right? I know everyone here has yelled at their kids, just like everyone here has probably appeared in a meeting in a way that, they're not proud of. I really think that the most important skill as a leader at work and as a leader at home is actually repair. And I just think that is so important for us to absorb. And you can't even get good at repair if you don't mess up. So the only way to get good at this skill is to be human. The other day I was in a meeting. I was with this kind of branding agency we're working with. And I have to be honest, in the last meeting we had with them, I came in pretty hot with feedback. And the feedback I don't think was wrong, but the how in which it was delivered is sat with me. And the whole meeting just felt adversarial. And I felt it. And I stopped it. I was like, hold on a second. I feel like something's at play here. I just want to say, maybe it seems off topic. I came in really hot last week. I did not deliver that in a way that was fair to you. I'm really sorry. That wasn't okay. And what it made me think about when I went home was the day before when I was really short with my son at night when he wanted to tell me one more thing before he went to bed, which probably was an important thing, but as we all know as parents at night, we're like, oh my goodness, this has to end. And again, that was kind of sitting with me. It's probably one of the reasons I was short at work again, and repairing with him and just saying, I'm sorry. I was really short at night. I yelled at you. That didn't feel good to me. That wasn't your fault. And I feel like these moments of repair, which only come when you're imperfect, it's actually the best skill as a leader and sets the stage in an organization, whether that's your work organization or your family. That in a lot of ways is just another organization looking to you for leadership and norms, is something we could all do today because we're all imperfect and has an immense impact on everyone around us.
What I love about this answer here is that it's just showing once again that no one size fits all, right? We all have our experiences as parents. We take them to our work. Different things will rise up to the surface. We need to do all of these things. Interesting for the era that we're in right now, how do you think tech and AI specifically can help lighten the load for parents and make more time for family? Who wants to tackle that one? Because that's a good question.
Robots.
Okay, next. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll just say one thing about it.
Yeah.
One thing is that if you look at the fair play system, what it is, it's a card game, and there's 100 cards that add up to about 2,000 items of invisible work. What we found was we were able to code those cards by homework, caregiving, and magic. And so even with AI helping with 50 of those cards, which were home and out, we coded 50 of the cards from our data over 10 years as non-outsourceable. So I would say there are still going to be 50 cards out there that are helpful, but as much as you love Alexia, your nanny, she's not going to be deciding whether your child's adenoids are being taken out. And she's not going to be there for, AI is not going to be there for middle of the night comfort, at least for right now. AI can help you deal with the gift to give your great aunt for her 100th birthday. So what I would say is it's very helpful, but I just worry that people are going to say, if you're so overwhelmed, just get help, which is an incredibly toxic message that a lot of parents have heard for a long time. So I'd say, yes, it'll be helpful for sure on the E, on that going to buy the mustard, but it won't know you need yellow and not spicy Dijon unless someone in your home is still holding the mental load, the cognitive labor.
Can I answer it?
Absolutely.
One of the things that I would sort of retract is that we know technology will be progressive. It's going to be more overpowering in our households, in our daily lives. It's going to be helpful. One of the things to think about is what we label digital well-being. And what we mean by that is, how do you as a family, especially early on, establish habits on how technology is being used, how you're modeling it, how you're setting it up as a communication tool with your children from the very, very early years. Because we know now, in terms of social media, the impact that is having on our youth. So those habits, and in keeping in mind with the increasing level of technology into the home, we have to really account for that early on.
Good. I'm going to have this next question be the last one here, only because we're getting told we have 5 minutes remaining. We did start late, and for anybody who does want to attend Michael Milken's keynote or anything else, because we are running past 5 o'clock. But the last question, it's to you, Alexis, and it's on the heels of what I've just asked. Are there any companies, given this is a Milken Institute event, are there any companies you're investing in that might help parents lighten the load and be more present at home?
Gosh, I need to invest in some of those robotics companies I'm talking about. Well, if you haven't checked out Good Inside, I'm not an investor, but big fan of everything that Dr. Becky is building. I do want to believe at the root of this, I think everyone here wants parents to be able to have the kind of dynamic that is optimal for their family, for their desires, for their thing, right? It is not one size fits all. And I want to believe that technology can help us optimize a lot of this. I just realize for the average American today, right, it is such a crushing thing just to be able to pay bills, to be able to show up and keep that job and provide that dual income household. And I don't know. I know, unfortunately, this is going to be something that will have to become a bigger and bigger issue, because I'm not going to go full Elon here, but it is very important that we keep having babies. I do believe, not just for the sake of our species, but also I really do believe that if for folks who want to do it, it is truly an amazing blessing to be able to. And I want to live in a world, or at least in a society here in the U.S., where if that is something you want, that the reasons why you can't or won't or putting it off are structural and societal. So I hope we keep talking about this. This is awesome having this panel even at Milken, and I feel humbled to be on the stage, because it is a very, very big issue, and it's not as simple as just saying go make more kids, right? Yeah. There's a tremendous load that is disproportionately carried by women in our society, and I want to see it get remedied. So.
Well, amen to all that. Marin, Eve, Alexis, Becky, Jeanette, thank you so much for your insights and for, I think, inspiring us all to be the best parents we can be, if we're so gifted to have that opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.